Hello everyone. We are blasting our fourth SpaceTalk Cloud session with another captivating topic. So no need to make you too much anxious. That is Mars colonization. So I think Mars colonization is one of the most burning topics since 1969, with the first men set foot on the moon surface. So before moving to our discussion, it should be better if I give you a brief introduction about SEDS Sri Lanka. SEDS Sri Lanka has been recently started on 1st of September 2018 by student named Amlasandu Basnayaka and the current chairperson of SEDS Sri Lanka. And also, he is the only Earth representative of Sri Lanka in Asgardia Space Nation. So that's bit about it. As said, Sri Lanka, those days we are designing a rover Mars to explore in Mars. So I would like to invite those who are voluntary in to help us. Please contact us. So let me introduce myself. I'm Nishadidi Soisa from University of Maratua, Faculty of Information Technology, representing SEDS Sri Lanka. And I have Jaime Alvis as my co-host. Hi, Jaime. Hi, Jaime. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me as well. Hello, I'm Jaime Alvis, and I am a student of University of Maratua, representing Faculty of Information Technology and SEDS Sri Lanka. So, I think Nishadi has already briefed about what is going to be held. So, I warmly welcome Mr. Jordan as well. So, Nishadi.
So, this time, our guest speaker. He is Jordan Brande, the senior journalist at RSES Society. RSES Journal, sorry.
RSES Journal, yeah, thank you.
And he has many experiences in high desert astronomy. So, hi Jordan, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
So, let us tell a bit about yourself. What makes you unique?
Well, I mean, for most of my engineering and things like that, I'm very self-taught. I began my studies in engineering and physics, but then I turned to journalism. And the magazine I currently work for, the RSES Journal, actually stands for the Refrigeration Service Engineers Society. So it's a mix of both worlds in there. And the more I study on space, the more I study physics and all that, I've come to realize just how essential things like HVAC is going to be to Mars colonization.
So, before going to the discussion, if you have any questions regarding this topic, please drop your question in our comment box. We are really excited to ask those questions from our guest speaker. So, Jaime, let's start.
Yes, thank you, Nishadi. So, I'd like to start from the first question. Actually, we would like to know what is Mars colonization? That's the first question.
I mean, it's a very, very broad topic, but I think real Mars colonization is going to be when we don't just make back and forth trips, when we're actually there full time, when we've got people living there, settling there, making babies there. That's going to really know when we're settled and when it's a new home. We're quite a ways from that happening, though, but it will happen within our lifetimes. I'm very sure of that.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, our second question is, have both private and also public organizations made commitments to researching the viability of long-term colonization efforts and to taking steps towards a permanent human presence on Mars. So, and can you list down those organizations? What are those organizations? Can you list down?
So I know there's Elon Musk at SpaceX. There's NASA, of course. There's Richard Branson with Virgin Orbit. There's Watch Us Fly US. There's the ESA. There's India is working on something. China is working on something. I know the Swiss are also working on something. We're in the middle of a second space race, and it's fascinating to watch right now. Who's actually going to be the first one to make it? I mean, I'm a U.S. citizen, so I'd like to think that NASA will, but it's hard to tell. And honestly, who knows? It's entirely possible that China or India will probably beat us.
Okay, so Jeremy?
Yes. So next question. So, as of 2018, is SpaceX funding and developing a series of Mars-bound cargo flights with the Starship?
Well,
Yeah, do you want to hear it again?
I don't know if you guys have been following, but like their Falcon Heavy launches and all that, it's just been beautiful to watch. And what they're using with like reusable rockets and things like that is kind of genius. And that's the only way that we're going to really end up in space is by not having multi-billion-dollar rockets that we can only use once. You know, it needs to be more commercial. It needs to be more everyday. And I have to admire what Musk is doing. I do. I mean, he's sort of catapulted us into this more viable future. I know he's got his heart on Mars, but I think we're going to have to work on the moon first. Start with the moon and then go to Mars. The moon is going to be a good testing ground for Mars. But yeah. Sorry, did I lose you?
Yes. So you think there's some sort of development being done?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are working on it right now, and it's become the main problem, which compared to 20 years ago is refreshing. 20 years ago, it was still the science fiction concept, but now it's not. Now it's become real. And, you know, as someone that grew up on science fiction and loves science and loves engineering, this is just a great time to be alive.
Oh, that's great. In European Space Agency, trying to do researches about habitats on Mars, and there is a program called the ExoMars program, no? ExoMars program, 2016 to 2020. What are they doing under these projects? We are really excited to know about those things.
So I have to admit, I didn't really know that much about them before you sent me that information, but I did a bit more research, and it seems like they're trying to do unmanned colonization efforts with robots and things along those lines. They're trying to test their entry and re-entry and just making sure that when their rocket lands, it's completely successful. They know that they don't want to have, spend all the time and money on a rocket that gets to Mars and then blows up when it gets to Mars, especially with people on board. You don't want that. They're also looking for life on Mars way ahead of time. They've got, robots there. They seem to be pushing the unmanned space flight part of it, which is, I think, it will give us the information we need to make future missions successful. The more information we have, the more prepared we're going to be. And yeah, I applaud them for that. It's a really good idea. And it's a different tactic than what most of the countries are doing.
Okay. So Shabby, I'll take the question. Okay. Mr. Jordan, so our next question is, well, we can see that Earth is similar to Venus in bulk composition, size, and surface gravity. But Mars's similarities to Earth are somewhat attractive and attentive. And when considering colonization, what do you think about colonization in Mars? Do you believe that it is possible for Mars to be like that?
I think definitely.
Do you believe that actually can Mars be colonized?
I think it can be. I think realistically it can be, and I think more so than Venus. Venus is way too far right now to even consider that. But Mars is close, and we've got somewhat similar conditions on Earth that we could test it out. I know the analog astronauts are out there testing that out. NASA has space camps, actually, where for one of their space camp trips, you can be a mock astronaut on Mars and possibly the Arizona desert or Utah desert or something like that, where they mimic the conditions. But the actual atmosphere, I think that's where that the HVAC things we were talking about will come in handy. We need to be able to live and breathe in the atmosphere, and with doing that, we need greenhouses. We need to regulate the kind of oxygen we have, the right amount of oxygen. I mean, too much oxygen and the habitat could blow up. Too little, and we poison ourselves. As far as we know, we can't farm on Mars, but that doesn't mean it's not possible to bring our soil there and use that as a means of farming on Mars. As an example, Israel is a good example. Up until maybe 60 years ago, no one really thought Israel was could be farmed. Israel could be made for land. And the story is, Israel turned a desert into just cities and cities right now, and it's fascinating to watch. They did something that nobody thought they could, and Mars is going to be the same way. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to depend on farmers and the kind of people that. It's going to depend on the trades that we tend to ignore. Farmers, HVAC people, a lot of it won't be the rich that end up colonizing Mars first. It's going to be more the blue collar that colonize Mars first.
Progress.
Right, and I think it's going to be the key in the end. It's the jobs that you wouldn't expect to really matter are going to be the most important to making sure that we're able to survive. Because if you can't breathe and you can't eat and there's nowhere to live, we won't really be able to colonize. It won't be a real colonization. It's just going to be a flyby. We're going to go there, take some samples and leave, and that's not really what we want.
So, Jordan, I have a question. So, according to your opinion, how much will it take to colonize Mars?
I mean, how do you mean? How much will it take?
How long? I mean, how long will it take? We have colonization on Mars.
From where we are now, I'd say 30 to 40 years from when we actually land. And from when we land with the intention of colonizing, I'd say at least another 20. You don't just land and set up a home and suddenly it's habitable. This is going to be like the Old West and pioneering days and things like that. Mars is very unforgiving. The atmosphere is harsh, space is harsh. You make a wrong move and you're probably going to die. So you need to be prepared for events that are going to happen, and you're going to have to encounter them first before you can handle them. So I think there's going to have to be a couple of waves of people to make things really habitable before we can move on. Before we're ready for families to come and set up houses and things like that, it's not really going to be viable for at least 20 years after we land. So you're talking about 50 years from right now is my best guess. But before that, we're going to be on the moon. I think we're going to be doing all of that on the moon first and making sure it works on the moon before we look at Mars. Just doesn't make sense to go that far out when we've got another test camp much closer.
Okay, that's great. So my next question is, who will be the first person to land on Mars? Prepare for it.
Maybe someone from SpaceX.
Yeah, I'll wait for that working. Personally, I think it should be a joint effort. I think it should be the planet as a whole. I think it's probably going to end up probably being an American or an Indian. The Indian Space Agency is making great leaps forward. China's doing very well too. Europe doesn't seem as interested in being first. They seem to want to join on other efforts, and I think that's a great idea. I think a joint effort could fill in a lot of our gaps that we have, because each country has problems that they've run into, and each country has, benefits that they've found that the others haven't. So if we could pool our resources together and land on Mars as the planet Earth rather than this country or that country, I think that's something I would like personally. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I hope I have.
So, Jeremy?
Yes. So my next question is, well, Mars does have an atmosphere, but it is about 100 times thinner than the Earth's atmosphere, and it has very little oxygen. So under this environment, what do you think? We have this question on how can we breathe in this such kind of an environment? What do you have? Do you have any idea about that?
Well, I think you have to, and we've been experimenting with this for decades with like biodomes and things like that. We know what humans need to survive, and we just have to replicate that environment. Whether or not we reach the point of terraforming, and like whether or not we reach the point where we can, not live in a covered dome, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think we're going to need domes. I don't think we're ever going to be able to just walk outside on Mars and breathe the fresh air. We're going to have to make the environment work for us, which means we're going to have little colonies here and there scattered throughout and ways to travel between them. But that's going to take, honestly, going back to heating and air conditioning, we're going to make sure we're going to need the right plants to create the oxygen. We're going to need to be able to get rid of our excess oxygen and CO2. We're going to need to make sure that we're not breathing the wrong environment. And even then, even if the environment is good for us, because we're living there, there's going to be plants and animals and things like that. We're going to need to make sure that the conditions are good for them. We're going to need to create, artificial sunlight, possibly, the right living conditions. The days are wildly different there than they are here. They're significantly longer. We're going to have to adapt to that. So there's a lot that needs to be done. The soil is going to have to be much better. We're going to need to make sure that we can walk around on Mars without spacesuits, because otherwise we're going to spend entire lifetimes in spacesuits, and that's not really what anybody wants.
It's going to be hard.
But, we'll know we've successfully colonized Mars when babies are born on Mars. That will be the biggest experiment ever. What a person, a human born on Mars, how they will react, because they won't be living under the same conditions that we grew up under. So if they can survive with those conditions, then I think we've succeeded.
So it's not easy to tackle.
Right. And a lot of that sounds like science fiction, and right now it is. It very much is science fiction. But the environment is available for us to eventually get to that point. It's not as crazy as it sounds anymore. Not as crazy as 20 or 50 years ago.
Okay, let's move to the next question. India's ISRO is fourth space agency to reach Mars after the Soviet space program, NASA, and ESA. So when comparing with the technologies, which country will land on Mars first?
That's really hard. I don't think the Soviets, I don't think Russia is going to make it first.
This is competitive.
Not to say that they don't have a good space agency. They do, but they're still very far behind. China is, I think, ahead of the US, but a lot of it deals with government conditions too. So not all governments really want that. Not all governments are allowing them the funding to have that. Not all governments have the freedom to do that. So I think, and I brought this up in a couple of my answers, the US is entering conditions where it may not be favorable that we would be the first one to make it as well. I would like us to. I know everybody in the space community would like us to. Again, people with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and things like that, we have private sectors that want us to, but the actual government the U.S. government has become kind of anti-science, and that works against us. NASA and things like that has become I'm sorry, not NASA. The Trump administration has become very scattered shot, and it doesn't really know what it wants. It wants a space force, but it's cutting scientific funding, and it's very hypocritical. Who will land first? I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't have a good answer, and if I answer, that kind of answer could easily alienate people, and that's not really what I want. We need a joint effort. So again, I'm going to push that agenda of we need to be unified rather than specific nationalities.
So, Jeremy, I select one question from the audience.
Yes.
Sure.
Time travel possible? As you think, Jordan, is the time travel possible?
I'm sorry, is time travel possible?
Yeah.
It's wildly different than space travel. No, I don't think it is. Part of me thinks that if it were possible, we would have known by now. If you're getting into like quantum physics, I personally think like the multiverse is possible. So if you do end up successfully time traveling, you're not going to end up in the same universe you started. So even if it's possible, they're gone. They're in a different dimension at this point. So it's not really useful to us. I fully believe in travel to different dimensions, just not so much time travel.
Okay.
But that's just me. So,
Jeremy?
Yes. Yes. Our next question will be, what do you think? Actually, what do you think? What planets can be colonized except Mars?
besides Mars, I think Jupiter is kind of a long shot. It really depends on the conditions. What I would like eventually is sort of you know how they make ready-made homes where you can sort of like 3D print homes or order a home from a catalog, or like an RV home, right? The idea of like a mobile home. Eventually, I think that concept could work where you just sort of have this large habitat and you pick the planet you want to live on, and then you go with the habitat. But it's going to be dependent on the habitats we create rather than the planet. Although that's at least 100 to 150 years down the road to be able to have that kind of access, because every planet is completely different. The environment on Jupiter and the environment on Mars and the environment on Venus, they're just immensely different. And the materials that we send need to be able to handle every different environment. You know, the wrong type of what works on Mars and that type of atmosphere, Venus has a completely different atmosphere. Some of them are immensely toxic. And I mean, it just may not be viable. I think that Mars is a good spot, but within our solar system, once you get past Mars, it gets a little tricky. I think we may need to look beyond our solar system for environments that are a little bit more like us to successfully live. We could send guinea pigs, but I don't know how well they would survive.
Okay. So, Sammy, did you find any questions from the audience? Well,
I would like you to carry ahead.
Okay. What are the new instruments on Mars 2020 rover?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Mars 2020 rover.
I mean, you can repeat that one more time. Something about instruments on Mars 2020.
2000 rover.
Oh, the rover. The rover. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the rover's. Hey, you right.
Sorry.
It's okay. Hey, I think the Mars rover is doing a great job. I think that finding some fantastic things, and the preview with humans of Mars has been awe-inspiring. I love looking at the photos that sent back. If you guys ever want a good, interesting time, and you're bored or just plain interested, check out the Mars raw data on the Curiosity rover. There are billions of pictures out there, and that's all raw data that you could look at. And NASA tends to only really publish the really good big stuff, but there's so many images out there to just look at. And yeah, I recommend doing it. It's fascinating to be able to see like the tiny grains of sand on Mars, and it makes it feel much more real. Yeah, not nearly as far away when it looks like Arizona.
So that's another question. Shall we move on again to the SpaceX? Will SpaceX Starship succeed? It seems to be radical designer. Will it be succeed?
Oh,
The space Starship. The SpaceX Starship. Will it be succeed?
Oh, yes. Without a doubt.
Radical design.
Without a doubt, I think it'll be a success. I've learned to have total faith in Elon Musk. He can be all over the place sometimes, but he's ambitious as hell. He seems to know what he's doing, and when it doesn't work, he fixes it. And I like his independent spirit when it comes to that. Yeah, I think it will work. I think that without Elon Musk and Starship and SpaceX, we wouldn't be at all where we are today. And I realize that makes me sound like an Elon Musk fanboy, but it's hard not to be impressed by what he's done even within the last year or two. He always shows proof. It's not like someone that, says he's going to do something and then just doesn't do it and we have to take him on his word. There's video out there. There's proof that he's doing what he says he'll do, even if it's like, launching a Tesla into space, which started out as a joke. He did it. So yeah, I respect that. He can be a little crazy, but I love that about him. So yeah.
Okay, so there's another. Jamie, do you have any questions? Okay.
Okay, you can ask.
There's another question from the audience. How will you change Martian atmosphere into a breathable one?
It's going to take a lot of greenhouse gases, a lot of different types of refrigerants. The refrigerant question is going to be a little bit more tricky because they are chemicals, they are gases, and how they're going to, react to the Martian atmosphere. But I think the basic way is to set up greenhouses. Really, I mean, we know we breathe oxygen. We know plants, emit oxygen. The simple way is to set up forests on Mars, set up gardens on Mars, and then individual houses and the domes and all that will have to have certain types of vents that release out the air and bring in the right type of air and things along those lines. It's going to be heavily standardized. There's going to have to be a lot of regulation on it. There's going to take a lot of certification on that because this is something I didn't really know until I started my current job, that heating and air conditioning, again, if done wrong, it's like any kind of chemistry, right? If the wrong chemicals go into the wrong place, bad things can happen. Things can blow up. You can poison people, things like that. And nobody wants that. So that's really what it's going to take is lots of regulation and and lots of trees, lots of environment. We're going to have to build new forests. And honestly, I think that'll be beautiful. It'll be interesting to be able to, be on Earth and look at Mars and see green.
So, okay, Jamie.
Okay, so there is another question from the audience. One has actually asked, shall we make light speed machine?
I really hope so. I really do. Personally, with my own personal interest, not speaking for anybody else, I've been interested in that for as long as I can remember. So yes, I think it's possible. I personally would love to work on it. If there's anybody out there watching that would like to have me on board, please contact me. Yes, I think it's very much possible. I think quantum theory allows us to do that. I think it's probably the best way to actually colonize outside of our solar system. Space is gigantic. And unless we find a way to cut down travel time, it's going to make it very, very hard to travel to Jupiter and back within our lifetime. It's not going to be just a vacation. We really can't do that. You go to Jupiter and back right now, and everybody is, going to be dead by the time you come back. So we need to fix that. I wish there was more research on that. And again, if anybody wants to collaborate on research on that, please contact me. I would love to be a part of that.
Okay. So there's another question. Yes. What are the plans with NASA Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System? What do you have? Do you have any idea about that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. What are the plans with NASA Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System?
To be honest, I can't really speak to that. I don't know. I would recommend looking on NASA. NASA has all that information, and they're far more knowledgeable than me. So that they will give you the correct information.
So
okay.
Okay, Jordan, we previously asked a question that what planets can we colonize except Mars? So I like to change that question a bit more. I'd like to ask what satellites can we colonize except planets?
Satellites?
Yeah, maybe Titan, Europa.
Oh, I think Titan is a very good possibility. I think the satellites are more likely to be habitable, definitely, than the planets. The planets have such extreme conditions. As I said, you mentioned Titan. Titan seems like a good possibility, but we don't really know a lot about the atmosphere. But to our credit, I know that NASA just greenlit a project to go check out Titan. So unmanned, of course. But I think if something like that were habitable, I think it'd be a great possibility. From an engineering standpoint, once we perfect the ability to make a planet habitable, to bring people to a place, I think we'll be able to check out everything, really. Anything is open. So the satellites are a great idea. I think that's something that should be pursued down the line. Because there are only so many planets in the solar system, and once we run out of those, we're going to need to check elsewhere.
Okay, so Jamie, do you have any last questions? I think we have more than 1 hour from his time.
Yes.
Do you have any questions, Jamie?
I don't think I have. So if you have, you may.
I think now we are approaching the end of the session. So before wind up, it is time to thank to the ones who have worked tirelessly behind the scene. So Jamie?
Yes, Mr. Jordan Brandon. So we'd like to thank you for coming and discussing with us in this amazing discussion. We were able to know about a lot of stuff, and we are so thankful for your contribution, and also
Actually,
what about
amazing experience from this discussion.
yes. It was an amazing experience for us to be with you and to chat with you, and also there were many things we were able to get to know. And then, Nishadi, do you have anything to say?
No, you can go.
Okay, so
Thank you guys very much
I
for having
hope
me.
you have something to say as well,
Do
Mr.
you have
John.
Jordan, do you have anything to say?
No, I'm very honored to be a part of all of this, and thank you guys for having me. And I would love to come back again if you guys ever want me. So thank you very much.
So we we hope that you'll be able to excel in your field, and we expect bring many more discoveries and many more news from you. So, and actually, as we have come to the end, I'd like to thank. There's a big there's a big team who is behind our event. So. Um, So among them, I'd like to thank Amila Sandun, Sani Duratnayaka, Lahir Udara, and Damjit Vimalsiri, and Thilan for their immense and massive contribution towards making this event a success. And I'd like to thank Nishadi and and obviously the audience as well. You guys were amazing, and your questions do matter. And actually, we were able to know about a lot about the spacecraft and about Mars colonization because from Mr. James Jordan as well. So Nishadi, I'll hand it to you.
So let's watch the question. Let's do another space talk with another space talk. So thank you, guys, and goodbye. Bye bye. Bye.
Thank you guys. Goodbye.